I wake from my bed in the middle of the night, startled by noises outside. Resting next to me on the bedside table is an old oil lamp. I pick it up, hoping to shed some light on the situation, but I misclick, and suddenly my avatar hurls the lamp against the wall. It shatters, spreading fire across the little wood cabin. The bottle of whiskey on the table ignites and the wooden chairs shatter, while fire crawls up the curtains and through the window, catching the chicken coop just outside. I hear a few loud squawks and see a fatal burst of feathers as I stand in the middle of the chaos, being slowly licked to death by the flames of my own stupidity. This is the first game from the newly founded Wolfeye Studios, whose co-founder, Rafael Colantonio, worked as a creative director on Dishonored, Prey, and more at Arcane Studios. In other words, systemic chaos is to be expected. Like Dishonored, Weird West is a real genre bender, mixing the open wilderness and gunslinging western with horror and fantasy. There's frontier justice and duels at high noon, but there's also witches, werewolves, and vampires. While Weird West comes with plenty of systems and simulations, at its heart this is a familiar computer RPG rather than some spectacular new translation of the immersive sim. Think of Larian Studios' recent Divinity games, where you can pick up almost every object in the world, set elements ablaze in real time, and sneak around and pickpocket people. The world feels far smaller and less cohesive than many big RPGs, instead being split up into smaller locations that you travel between on a map. The story of Weird West works as an anthology. There are 5 characters, who you play in sequence, each with their own story to unravel and specific problems to solve. A bounty hunter whose husband has been kidnapped by a powerful flesh-eating entity. A hogman hungry for revenge after their horrific transformation. A young Anishinaabe hunter defending his home from the spirit of greed. A werewolf. And finally, a witch. Bridging each of these distinct chapters are several recurring characters: a strange young girl who speaks in riddles, a wandering witch who plays games with you, and a bounty hunter obsessed with immortality and bad jokes. Each life lived spills over into the next chapter. If you liberate a monster-infested ghost town as the bounty hunter, it'll be a bustling place with shopkeepers and a saloon when you return as the hogman. Similarly, if you go on a huge robbery or killing spree, that place will be empty except for an overflowing graveyard. Previous characters also persist in the world after you've finished playing them, hanging about ready to be recruited into your posse. The overarching plot eventually sees your 5 avatars pulled together into a big showdown that takes your previous lives into consideration. This is typical of computer RPGs, where there's such varying complexity in the earlier stages. All that can be mustered by the end is a cold, calculative summary of your actions. While the overlapping structure of 5 different characters living within one world is ambitious, Weird West struggles to coalesce. It ends up feeling a bit limp. And if the main story is disjointed but ambitious, then the side quests are a genuine letdown. The map is huge, with hundreds of locations that will pop up as you travel across the wilderness, but a lot of these places end up feeling semi-content to blast through, rather than tales to savor. Random encounters never feel anything more than frivolous, and even the best side missions never get weird enough. I was hoping for something more in the vein of Lovecraft and weird fiction. Dishonored's talking rats, sentient hearts, and magic whales, for instance. It turns out that the Weird West isn't all that weird. I must have explored dozens of underground mines over the course of the game, and even more caves and ancient ruins, each using the same mysterious architecture. While there's some neat level design with secret rooms and side entrances, too many of these levels feel like they've all been constructed from an extremely limited tile set. The visual's a dark comic book style that feels a bit like a washed-out Mike Mignola, also doesn't quite pop in-game the same way it does in the character portraits and animated cutscenes. With Weird West, these magic moments appear far too infrequently. Sheer ambition means eventually something special is bound to be spat out by the game's extensive simulations. A mishap with an oil lamp, for example, although it'll be a rough and unwieldy thing, all the more crude when compared with the extensive elegance of a Dishonored. Instead of doing what many, myself included, had hoped, converting the spirit of Arcane and the immersive sim into an inventive top-down form, Weird West has stumbled into a more mundane existence as a pared-down computer RPG that's nowhere near weird enough.